You're listening to Peterborough's community radio, Salam Radio. Salam Radio. 106.2 FM.
Assalamu alaikum. Good evening. You listen to Salam Radio 106.2 FM. I'm your host Shaz Nawaz, and I have in the studio with me
Kieron Bateman. Salam.
Walaikum salam. Kieron, how are you?
I'm all good. All good. It's been a busy week. It's always been a busy week.
It is a busy week, isn't it? I think people will be surprised if we said it wasn't busy.
What 1 week I'm going to intentionally take. I'm going to come in here on the Monday, and then I'm going to take a week off.
Yeah.
And then it'll still have been a busy week because I'll have other stuff to do.
Yeah, but there's a whole list when you take time off. You know,
Yeah.
Of things. Well, you take time off because you've got so many things to do that you've got to take the time off.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is it. This is exactly.
You're either busy
it.
or you're busy.
Yeah.
As always, we welcome your participation. You can do that by calling in the studio on 01733 602 133. Text us on 07411 191 062 or comment on any of the live streams which are Facebook, YouTube, X or Twitch. This week on Wealth Made Simple, we are going to talk about the 2024 autumn budget, Kieron. How exciting is that?
Do you know what? I'm actually really looking forward to this episode.
Good. So you'll do all the talking, I'll do all the listening, because I've done 4 webinars on the budget for different groups.
That's because you know it so well.
And then I've got 2.5, 3 hour deep dives.
Yeah.
In the coming weeks.
So you should know this really well. So you do all the talking and I'll do all the listening.
I'll be just sharing the same stuff again and again and again. So if I listen to you, I might pick up something new or different that I haven't thought about. What's interesting though is the budget raised 40 billion in addition to the exchequer.
Really? Bless you.
Thank you. That's a lot of money.
That is a crazy amount of money.
Yeah. And that, as Rachel Reeves said, is to fix the foundations and deliver change. Invest, invest, invest.
Well,
is the motto.
That's so I hear.
Yeah. Do you want me to kick off?
Go for it. I'm really interested to see what your thoughts on this.
And something which used to change often enough in recent years, I'm talking about in the last, let's say, 15 years, was the personal allowance.
Yeah.
That hasn't changed. And it usually increases by a small margin. So if anybody earns £12,570 every year, and that's the only income they've got, there's no income tax to pay on that amount. And with inflation and everything else, with costs going up every year, which they do, we all know that.
Yeah.
I was surprised to see that wasn't increased to, even if it would have been 13,000. Usually it's a bit of an increase. I mean, in my view, I think that allowance should be around about £20,000. 12,500 or 12,570 isn't enough.
Not in today's economy.
Yeah, someone who has a part-time job, for example, to survive, and even if they haven't got a part-time job, they're earning more. They start paying tax. It just doesn't work in today's economy.
No, I agree.
What's your thoughts on that, Kieron?
I think that we should be taxed from zero. No, I'm joking.
Yeah. I think you mean we should be taxed zero is what you want to say.
That's what I meant. Yeah. Absolutely. No, I think tax is has a long and complicated history. I mean,
yep.
How long is the tax code?
22,000 pages.
Okay, so imagine reading a book that is 22,000 pages long, and it's convoluted, it's complicated, it contradicts itself, it's been overwritten, it's been rewritten, it's gone back.
Grey areas.
There's just so much, and I think if you dive into the history of tax initially was only levied in times of war to pay for the military.
Yeah, that is true for some of the taxes, especially I think it was the inheritance tax. It was a temporary measure.
It was a temporary measure. Now, land tax, and that the king ultimately historically owns all the land, and you buy bit of it off of him, and he charges you a regular tax because it's still fundamentally his land. He can take it back whenever he wants.
Documentary on that. Did you watch that, by chance?
Don't know what you mean.
No?
yes, I did. But yeah, it's so I find tax one of those things that I think personally we should scrap the entire lot and start again. But that creates its own set of problems.
A lot of conversation around whether it should be just a one flat rate. Say 15%. Different people band different figures around.
Yep.
And here you go, pay it.
I think the biggest problem is I would like to see an open ledger. I would like to see where our taxes are going. And that's never going to happen. We know this, yeah. But I suspect, and can't prove it, obviously, but I suspect there is a lot of wasted money and a lot of missing money that just gets eaten up by the system. And I think if you forced the government to have an open ledger, where they say there's a 22 billion pound black hole or a 40 million pound deficit, or we're going to increase our income by this amount, you'd be able to see it. As the public, they work for the public. They work for us.
Yes,
don't ever forget that.
Yeah.
We are the taxpayers. They work for us. We pay for them. So they should have our best interests at heart, not theirs. And that's been lost, I think. So yeah, that's where I think I agree with you that I think the personal allowance should be raised to £25,000 because everything's so much more expensive. Everything. Yeah. Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox now.
But in line with the Labour Party manifesto, they haven't increased income tax. So
no.
They've stuck to that particular promise. National insurance, if you're an employer, that's increase over the years, slowly edging up to what I would say is a pretty significant amount. 13.8% now increased to 15%. And people sometimes will say, oh, it's a 1.2% increase. It's not a 1.2% increase. It's a 1.2 percentage points. 1.2% on a 13.8%, roughly speaking, is around about 9%. We won't get to the decimal points, but it's around 9%.
9% increase. Now, I've done a little maths for you on this, so just follow me.
Is this where you grab a flip chart?
Yeah. I'll grab a flip chart, write it all out for you, do my best Shaz impression. So, I own a shop. Right. I've got staff, and I sell 1,000 of one particular product. We're just going to use this on one product for the ease of this. And these are round figures just to make it easier in my brain. Right. I buy them at cost for 50 pence each. All right. So, but I'm selling them at £3.50 each. And people go, well, where does the other £3 come from? Okay, well, I've got 10 staff members. They cost me £200 a day each. So that's £2,000 a day. So for the cost of the stock is £500. Cost of the staff is £2,000. Under the 13.8%, cost of my national insurance was £276. I've got utilities, stamp, rent, business rates, all the rest of that. Let's say that's £500 a day, just for the ease of the maths. Right. That means my daily costs are £3,276, just roughly. So I sell those products for £3.50.
The stock costs you £500. I think you said £2,000.
Yeah,
for £500.
No, £2,000 for the staff.
Staff, yeah.
Stock cost me £500.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right. So I'm selling each of those items for £3.50 in a day, and I sell 1,000 of them in a day. I make my costs back, and I make a little bit of profit. I say a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not much. It's not much at all. I make a grand total of about £200 profit, which in today's economy is almost nothing.
Yeah.
Now, with the new national insurance, that cost has got to go up to £4.
Are you including the rent rates, all the other overheads? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that cost has to go up to £4 now. That's a 50 pence increase, but as a percentage, of £3.50, that's a lot. That's a huge increase.
Yep.
Because of the 9% increase of national insurance. Because of where it comes in the chain, my outgoing costs for the day go up. My outgoing costs for the day go up means my prices have to go up in a line. So just by doing that, if you're costing the employer more money, they're not going to sit there and go, okay, well, you can have it out of my pocket. They're going to pass the cost on to the consumer. That's business.
Which is then employees in a roundabout way, all of us.
Yeah, so all of us
So the
end
employees
up paying more.
and they're now paying more.
And we all lose out.
And that's happened so many times.
And they don't see that and the problem is the majority of people will only look at that and go, they'll look at that and they'll do a quick Google search. Oh, that product you sold me, you can buy it at cost for 50p. But you're charging me £4 for it. Money grabbing business entrepreneur wants all our money and it's at their cost. They should pay more tax. Rah, 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 rah. Well, hang about. Let's include the rest of the costs.
On top of that, if you're talking about a small business, again, I'm just sharing here the figures as opposed to sharing an opinion.
Yeah.
And just to expand on yours, because that's the next point I wanted to make here, is that national minimum wage for those who are earning national minimum wage, and I'm all for increasing national minimum wage, by the way, always have been, and I'm cool with that. But when you add that to that cost,
yeah,
if you're paying national minimum wage, then you're going to increase your prices even more.
Exactly.
So the increase in national minimum wage for those who are on national minimum wage means the extra they get, they're going to spend on paying more for goods and services.
Interestingly, though, inflation never went up by the percentages that it goes up today when there was no national minimum wage.
There you go.
I'm not passing judgment there. I'm just saying that if you look at it historically, before there was the national minimum wage, people still lived. Yeah. People still made a living. People still had good bosses that paid good wages.
It's always the few who spoil it for the many, isn't it?
But you earned your wage.
Yeah.
You weren't entitled to it. And when times were hard, times were hard. They were hard for everybody. When times were good, they were good, and they were good for everyone. But you didn't.
Times always seem good when you look
roasting
back
glasses.
in the past. It was good then, yeah, but I remember talking to you then, and you were saying it isn't good. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm not entirely. So I think there should be a minimum living standard, but that's not necessarily a minimum living wage. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, there should be a standard that everybody has the right to live to. But then again, I also object when somebody who's never worked a day in their life has a better lifestyle than I do, and I work really, really hard. Maybe they're just working smarter. I don't know. I'll get off that particular soap. It's a day of soapboxes, isn't
That's
it?
a topic for a different day.
Yeah.
Dividend bans haven't changed, but we've seen
they've been cut over the years.
They've been cut significantly.
And I don't think they should ever have been cut. I think they should remain high, because the business owner is the one that takes all the risk.
I've had this argument so many times, and this isn't about a Conservative or a Labour budget or any budget.
No.
It's about not fully appreciating and understanding the risk that small business owners, which is the backbone of this country here, I don't know the exact number, but we're looking at 5 million plus, because it changes, who work very hard and who take a huge amount of risk. I mean, there's so many out there that I know, I'm sure you do too, Kieron, who've got personal loans, credit card debt, overdrafts.
Oh, absolutely.
Finance on equipment, finance on their vehicles, refinance their own home, borrowed money from family and friends. And interestingly, the majority of them, I think it's safe to say, I'm talking about the majority who I've met and spoken to and known over the past 21 years, while working with small business owners. Prior to that, I was obviously working with larger businesses. is that they always pay themselves last.
Which I think
Now,
is a mistake.
There's a whole debate around that, which we can maybe cover on another one. Maybe you might want to
I'll
make a
take
note
a
about
note on that. Pay yourself first.
But that's what they do, and the reason why they do that is they are, in a way, and some people might not agree with this, working selflessly to make sure everything else runs, and believing that this is an investment, and at some point they'll get paid back.
Yes.
And there's a huge number, whether you want to call them solopreneurs or something else, lifestyle businesses, call it what you like, in that 5 odd million.
Yep.
Who would earn more working elsewhere.
Yes. Yeah. I also think that
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then see, now you're going to pay the same one as an employee pays. And I'm going to go, no problem with employees, as you know.
Yep.
But employees aren't taking the same risks. You've got to incentivize
you've got to incentivize
entrepreneurship in some way
Yeah.
in the current system we have in the free market system.
If you want
For
growth
it to work.
Yeah. If you want growth, you need to incentivize. And I think the whole thing with the dividends being knocked down over the years, thankfully they've not been touched this time around, but
There's not much to leave.
there's not much left to lose. Is the
£500
yeah
is the allowance now.
yeah which is nothing. Let's be honest, it is
They
absolutely
might
nothing.
just take it away.
Yeah.
In my view.
Yeah, they may as well. And if I put my house at risk to start a business, and then I employ people and I give them some security, because they've not taken any. If my business goes down, they go and get another job. So, but I lose my home.
Yeah.
So I'm giving people work, I'm giving people a job, I'm giving people a livelihood, I'm risking my own home, I'm paying a higher amount of tax because I've got a corporate account and I've got to pay corporation tax, I've got to pay business rates, I've got to pay employers' national insurance,
VAT, if
I've got to pay VAT, if it's,
VAT, employed national insurance,
I've got to pay into the pension scheme
business
for my
rates,
employees.
yeah, business rates.
All of this stuff. So these are all of my expenses as a businessman, as an entrepreneur. And at the end of the year, when my business has made, for argument's sake, let's say it's made £50,000 after all costs, right? And I go, actually, I can take £500 of that, but if I take any more, I'm paying huge amounts of tax on it. And people go, oh yeah, but the richer pay more tax. It's like, okay. The top 5% of people in the country pay 50% of the tax. 51.2% to be precise. If they left the country, and these are the people that have the wealth to leave and never return, the tax won't get covered. It's as simple as that, and it is as simple as that.
But linked with that, the earlier point you made about employees, and I feel sorry for those employees and small business owners, where with these costs increasing, some of the employers might say, we can't afford to run anymore.
Yeah.
And they're losing their jobs, and they've not done anything wrong, have they?
Exactly, and this is my point. If you start,
and they start again, look for a new job. It's how much hassle for them.
So we all have biases, and there is an absolute bias that I don't earn much money. I'm employed. My boss drives a flash car. He earns loads of money. He's got everything he wants in the world. Why can't I have a piece of that action? It's not fair. Okay, take the same risks. Do what he did. There's no secret formula. It's not hidden from you. Put the work in.
Just listen to Wealth Made Simple, and we'll share all the tips and tricks that we know and techniques.
But this is it. It's
to run what we would see as a decent business.
And when you've got all those costs laid at your feet, and you're going, but I really want to look after my staff. I want to look after them really well and take care of them, because I'm going to do in my business what no one else has done before me. I'm going to take care of my staff. FYI, you're not the first person to want to do that. But I can promise you, there are costs that you do not take into account, that you do not see. They are hidden costs of business that only business and entrepreneurs, small business owners will see. and they pay for it. And they pay a lot for it.
And the sleepless nights and the troubles and the worries. And if you got, like, you use the example of having 10 people on your payroll. That's a huge responsibility.
It is.
Because now you got 10 people who you work with, who work for you, with you, call it what you like. They're your colleagues. They get to know you. You get to know them. They care about you. You care about them. Some of them have life partners, or they have children, families, and you feel responsible for all of them.
Yeah. So if let's
And
say
that's a huge burden, Kieron. You know?
yeah, let's say for just argument's sake, those 10 people we employ, 6 of them are married to life partners. Of those 6, 4 of them have kids.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not 10 people that you are supporting. Your employees are supporting their families.
Spouse, children. Yeah.
So suddenly that goes from my house is on the line, but you know what? Because I employ them, that's 10 people's houses. That's 8 people's partners, 6 people's children. That I am ultimately my business is responsible for. That's huge.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
And if things aren't going so well, I'm going to take food out of my mouth first to give it to you.
Happens all the time, doesn't it?
Happens all the
Because
time.
to be fair to the employee or an employee, at the end of the month, they need their salary paid.
Yes.
Or their wage paid, because they've got bills to pay.
Yeah.
So there's no reason why they should be paid at all. But sometimes an employer will borrow money or come up with the funds to make sure everybody gets paid and they suffer themselves. But nobody ever sees that.
No.
I say nobody. Seldom do people actually see that.
Seldom do people even acknowledge it.
Because, I mean, and no one's going to, put a post on Facebook, I couldn't pay the wages this month, so I had to borrow 10 grand from my dad to pay everybody off. There might be some, by the way. It's embarrassing, isn't it?
Yeah, but you don't do it.
People want to would feel like a failure, possibly, or and create doubt, and their customers and clients and suppliers may get concerned. They want to save face with their family and everybody else. So most of them suffer in silence.
Yep, and that's what, and like I say, that's one of the biggest misconceptions we have, especially around wealth and entrepreneurs in this country. And the budget, as it stands, attacks those people. The way I see it, just my opinion, but the way I see it, it attacks those people, and those people are the people that are employing everyone else. When they brought in higher taxes for rental properties, for businesses in rental,
that worked out well, didn't it? The Osborne tax.
Did the tax stay with the? And this is the other thing. Did the tax stay with the landlords, or did it get passed on to the tenants?
Made that point many times since 2013-14 when the whole this kind of focus started. Rents will go up, and what's happened? Rents have gone up.
You can't improve the economic standing of this country by attacking small business owners.
You have to change the whole system.
You have to change the system.
Yeah, and the system's not going to change because we live in a free market capitalist society, and that's how this particular country operates. Yeah, I have a view on that, as you know, and you have a view on that, which differs, but that's the way it is, isn't it? So work with the confinements that you've set to how you think the country should operate, or change the entire system.
Yeah, exactly.
And there are countries out there, as you know, who have different systems in place.
Yeah, and some of them work very, very well. Yeah,
I mean, there's a whole debate, and I think we should cover this from a business point of view as well. I think this would be phenomenal. Is the growth of China, I'd say. So this country had huge troubled times in the 70s, as did other countries, in terms of inflation, so on and so forth. So if you compare the progress of China, say, from 1970 up until now, vis-a-vis America, Western Europe, possibly even in India and Russia, and look at the remarkable growth of that country. And I'm not here to talk about their human rights. I'm not here to talk about how they run the country. I'm not here to talk about
business,
their politics or their political parties. Just from a purely business point of view, It's phenomenal, Kieran. Really is.
Well, I mean,
What they've achieved.
taking a note, we will cover that at some
Yeah, and
point.
again, like I said, I'm not here to pass any judgment about the Chinese or anybody else.
No.
And people have strong views one way or the other. But
It's not my
I think,
place to say
yeah,
anything.
you and I always say success leaves clues. Look at those clues. What's China doing?
Emulate
About
it.
20 years ago, our economy was bigger than China's. Today, China's economy is around about 7 times bigger than ours, there or thereabouts. Okay? That
says
tells
a
us
lot.
all that we need to know
Yep.
about a party in a country that we think has a strong grip on its people. And I might talk a bit about that after the break. So please make sure you join us, where we'll go to China and then come back to the UK and talk about the budget and what it means for you, us, and everybody else who lives in this country. See you very shortly.
You're listening to Salam Radio, and it's now time for Isha Azan. This Azan is sponsored by UK Islamic Mission, serving humanity since 1962.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر، الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم، وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته. اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم بك نحيا وبك نموت وإليك المصير. رضينا بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم نبيا ورسولا.
اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه
This is Salam Radio, Peterborough's Muslim community radio. Broadcasting on 106.2 FM and online.
Assalamu alaikum. You're listening to Salam Radio on 106.2 FM. If you've rejoined, thank you very much for staying tuned in. If you have a cup of tea, coffee, or whatever you had. And if you've just tuned in, thank you for joining us. We're having a very interesting conversation. I'm Shaz Nawaz and my co-host is
Kieron Bateman.
And we are talking about, well, 2 or 3 different moving parts.
Yeah.
Rabbit holes, as Kieron calls them. Before I get onto those, or we get onto those.
Didn't we agree they're badger holes because rabbit holes are too small?
No, they're bigger now. Can we call them elephant holes or something else? They keep expanding every week. As always, we welcome you.
At some point, they'll be called black holes. Ever expanding.
22 billion. So, as always, we welcome your participation. You can do that by calling in on 01733 602 133. Text on 07411 191 062. Comment on any of the live streams on Facebook, YouTube, X or Twitch. This week we started off on Wealth Made Simple by talking about the budget, but we went down 1 or 2 little rabbit holes and just
we did, and
I'd
love to hear other people's opinions on this.
I think it'd be good, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it'd be really good to open up a proper conversation on this. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of, and this is generally what happens is the budget gets announced, it gets released. They discuss it in Parliament, and there's a lot of noise, and the Speaker has to tell people to pipe down. Yeah, not that I watched it live at all, much, but
yeah,
it's all spoken in legalese. It's spoken in government speak.
Yeah, and the detail comes out usually a couple of weeks later. But the point I was making about China earlier was if you look at the phenomenal growth from where it was, remember. I mean, again, I don't have the exact numbers here.
Yeah.
But let's just call it 1 billion. I know that their population is more than 1 billion now. But turning around the lives of 1 billion people, and even back in the 70s,
Yeah.
it was quite a few 100 million, is a phenomenal thing to do.
Yes, it is.
We've got a much smaller country. We should be able to do it quicker.
It should.
With all the expertise and everything else that we have and the supposed infrastructure, the know-how, the IP. We know how to do it. We went around the world telling people how to do things to improve their lives.
Well, I mean,
show them a better way.
The way you do it is you scrap the current House of Commons. Start again with businessmen, because that's who it was originally. It was wealthy businessmen, not politicians.
We'll link that with our conversation on China.
Yes.
Next week.
Yeah.
To say how, from a business point of view, what lessons can we learn as individuals?
Yes.
And also,
I'm not saying go all Guy Fawkes, by the way. I'm not. Yeah, that's not what I'm about.
Interesting documentary on Netflix, by the way.
Yeah, very interesting.
Drama, whatever you want to call it. Box. It's not exactly a box set, but yeah. The annual pension allowance, which increased to 60,000 from 40,000 a couple of years ago, has remained in place, which I think is a good thing.
That's a good thing. Yep.
Encourages people to invest in the future, and therefore, when they retire, if they ever get to retire, they are less likely they are less likely to be reliant on the state. And having spent quite a bit of time as a local councillor, the amount of money that the state spends on adult social care is increasing every year because people are living longer. That's a good thing, by the way.
Yeah.
People are living longer, and so we're doing something right there from that point of view. But we should encourage them to invest and save where they can, so that they have a good retirement. So that works well. One of the big changes was that a pension pot now becomes part of inheritance tax.
And that hurts.
That's going to hurt a lot of people, and it's going to put people off from investing as much as they were in a state pension. And you get to see the consequence of this later on down the road when someone says, I'm retiring, I haven't got much money in terms of the money I can draw down on my pension. Because remember, you can draw down up to 25% as a tax-free lump sum at the age of 55, which is increasing to 57 over the next 2 or 3 years. Whenever the pension age increases, and then the rest, obviously, they can draw down and pay income tax. Well, if they haven't got much saved up then they're more reliant on the state. And if the state is already struggling, stretched, that makes it harder.
It does. It means there's going to need to be more taxes levied to pay for this. Yeah, but I think also with, including it in the IHT, I mean, that just, in my opinion, that's just wrong. Yeah, I work really hard. You work really hard. My father worked hard. And when you get to pension age, it is a reward for having done 40, 50 years of hard work. Whatever industry you're in, whether you're a teacher, a policeman, entrepreneur, whatever, that is a reward for your hard work, right? Because you have paid taxes for 50 years. And how many of the elder generation, and you see this on adverts all the time, winter's coming, fuel bills have gone up. Am I heating or am I eating? Well, do you know what? If you stop taxing them so damned much on their pensions, wouldn't be so much of a problem, would it? Because they would have more money. And where would that money go? It would go back into the system. It would go back into the economy because they've still got to live. But they are the people that are spending daily because they have to, because they're not working.
And what makes it even worse for them now, again, I'm just reporting the numbers. I hope I haven't shared an opinion on this.
No, my job's to share the opinion.
No, because I think if I should share an opinion, people will say that I have
an agenda,
a known political leaning,
and
therefore I'm somehow supporting that view. So I just sharing the facts here and sharing what people have said to me in the world of business. And now one could say that's a bit skewed because you're only talking to business owners and you're not talking to other people, but that's who I work with on a daily basis.
It's all right. Don't worry, listeners. I'll share the opinion. I'll get outraged for us.
Is that? But my view would be different to yours, as you know.
Yes.
And most small business owners also rely not only on a pension pot, but when they look to exit, i.e., retire, they either sell or pass on their business to the next generation. Now, if they can't pass on to the next generation for whatever reason, either they've gone on to pass it on to, or the children aren't interested, or something else, is they'll have some level of hope that their business will be worth something and they can sell it.
Yes.
But with the changes in entrepreneurs relief, which is now called business asset disposal relief,
badder,
as you've heard me talk about from time to time, more tax will be paid. The capital gains tax has increased.
Yeah.
And business asset disposal relief is at 10% and has been since Gordon Brown introduced it as entrepreneurs relief, I think in 2007 or thereabouts.
2007, yeah.
And come down from 10 million to a million. The tax is at 10%, going up to 14% from the 6th of April 2025 and 18% from 6th of April 2026 or thereabouts. I don't know. Always get
18% is an 80% increase.
Yep.
Let that sink in. They're almost doubling the amount you pay. That's criminal, isn't it?
I think we just need to understand, and this is me purely from a tax and accounting point of view. As I said earlier, people spend 20, 30, 40, 45, 50, however many years, different people spend a different amount of time running, setting up, creating, taking over a business from their parents or grandparents or whomever, or buying it, acquiring it. And all of that, at the end, they have this hope value that they can sell it for something, and that gets taken away from them. I think there's better ways of running that particular process to incentivize people to go out there, create wealth, create employment, buy from local businesses, which I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
have legislation to buy local, and then create jobs, attract inward investment, and have employee apprentices. I'm a huge fan of that as well. You can see where some of my views are going now. And what that does is then you've created so much wealth in your local city, in your local area, for the local people. Everything increases, improves, aspiration levels improve, education levels will improve, living standards will improve. And at the end, someone says, well, I'm selling my business for £1 million, for example. I'll have to pay £100,000 of tax man. I've got 900 grand to show for it. But I've spent 25 years. Look how many jobs I've created. Look how many families I've supported. Look how much tax I've paid. Look at what has happened in the local community in the area. What other businesses have prospered because of me, and how I've prospered because of other businesses and my team members and employees. And then incentivize even more for employers to give shares. And there are some incentives, by the way, shares and a part of the business to their employees.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once they've achieved something or done something, which then gets them to share the cake. Yeah. And I know loads of business owners who would be happy to do that if the government set
worked with them.
Direction. There are some things you can do right now, like an employee management investment scheme and certain kind of employee ownership trust, which also have had some changes. But there's more that the business government can do, I think, on that, and that would be so much better.
But I think with some of these changes, what you're looking at is you're looking at small businesses, especially the smaller of the small businesses, closing up shop. So you're damaging the economy by doing this. You're preventing people from getting jobs by doing this. So what you're actually doing is you're costing yourself as a country, as a government, you're costing yourself more money because these entrepreneurs, these small businesses that are maybe 2-3 people strong, suddenly they're not going to exist. So I need to word this carefully because I'm not trying to make a political statement here. But by doing what you've done, you are eliminating small businesses, which means the bigger businesses that can absorb this sort of thing are going to get bigger. They're going to have to because
the fittest, isn't it? Yeah.
Because they're going to go into the spaces where the smaller businesses were. So they're going to thrive. So you're putting more wealth in the already super wealthy, and you're not incentivizing those who have little or have a good idea to grow, in my opinion. So you are creating a wider gap between the super wealthy and the poor and the working class.
And we've seen that over the years, haven't we? And
that's what this budget does. And that really annoys me because it goes completely against what they claim they do. They're for the people. They're not. They're I'm going to step away from that conversation. But you know what I mean.
It's
I'm not wrong.
Interesting conversation to have.
It's
why not?
They are.
You have to talk about these things. If you don't talk about these things, you shy away from them.
They are stepping into the realms.
Polarizes and
and people can
a vacuum and avoid. Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
By all means, people can disagree with me, but they aren't for the people anymore. They're for the super wealthy, and that budget proves it, in my opinion.
With that, you might have heard some people talk about farmers and agricultural property relief and business property relief, which has changed.
Yeah.
So the first £1 million now isn't taxable, and then above and beyond that, 50% of it gets taxed. So basically, in effect, you're paying 20% inheritance tax on anything above £1 million, as opposed to paying 40%. And there's been a lot of noise, especially from the farming industry, on the agricultural property.
There were a lot of wax coats in London very recently.
Yeah, and Jeremy Clarkson's been busy on his farm as well.
Yeah. And he's got a massive voice. He's got a massive following.
Corporation tax hasn't changed, which is good.
Which is good. I think it's still too high.
There's a strong debate for that. And from a pure business point of view, I'd agree with that.
I absolutely too high. Yeah. It's again, we're back to right. If you want to reduce costs within a country and make it more affordable for people, you cannot keep taxing businesses. You cannot keep increasing taxes.
I think there's better ways of doing things to increase the tax take. Or intake. And we might come on to that in a few minutes, possibly, but I'll run through some of the other things that I think some of our listener viewers might be interested in.
I don't. Do you know what I think would be the biggest increase in our tax intake?
You're going to hold on to that?
Yep.
And we're going to come on to that within 6 minutes, I promise you. Capital allowances, have remained as they are, which is good.
That's good. Yeah.
As is R&D, research and development. We've got some changes in the van fuel benefit. Electric cars tax will go up over in the coming years. VAT introduced on private school fees.
Yeah, but I mean,
20%.
Going back one step to tax
On
on,
cars.
tax on electric cars. Okay, our current road tax system, you pay tax on your car based on its CO2 emissions. Electric car has no CO2 emissions. That's why they're exempt from tax currently. Yeah, and that's why you tried to push people to it
At the time.
And
Like we were pushed, and you're not old enough to know this, or too young, Kieran, about how fantastic diesel cars were at one point.
I remember.
Yeah. Look where we are now.
Exactly.
With that. And it'd be interesting to see what impact the VAT has on how many people continue sending their children to private school, because there'll be quite a few. And I'm going to have this conversation a lot with people, where when someone first signs up their child or enrolls their child to a private school, thinking what the majority of the demographic of the majority of parents, but when they go there, they find something very interesting is there is a significant number who are sending their children to private school by having support from the wider family members.
Yes.
Grandparents, uncles, aunts, here,
Yeah.
there, just to make it all meet or have a second job. Because they believe strongly in that. And I'm not here to share a view on that.
I'll share a view on it.
Be strong in that, yeah.
And I'll tell you why I'll share a view on it. So
I'm glad we talked about the budget today, Kieran.
I know, right? So both my brother and sister went to state school. I went to private school. I was the only one out of three of us that did. I was a straight A student, not because I was intelligent, but because my largest class was 12. My brother and sister are both intelligent. They're both, doing their own thing, but neither of them got amazing grades.
They don't have the same support.
But they didn't have the same support network that I did. And as a product of private school education, and in a family where I'm the only one who had it, I am my pathway in business, finance, understanding, life, all of that has been different, has been more thought through, and has been, for lack of better terminology, better crafted for me, because I had a deeper dive in what I was interested in, what I liked, what I wanted to do when I grew up, what I needed to learn, what was going to benefit me as an individual, to the point that when it got to, we were doing my GCSEs, the school said to me, you can stay on into the college part, but we don't think this is the right for you, because they've had a chance to look at me, to see me grow, and they advised me on a different path and said, you can stay in the same sphere, but go down this path instead, because we think that's more right for you. And that's what I do now.
Oh.
And they absolutely were right. But they didn't have 40 children in a classroom.
I think in my secondary school, I had 33. I am a huge fan of comprehensive schools. You won't be surprised to hear, Kieran.
No, I'm not.
But even though pretty much will go to two different separate private schools, but the system needs to invest more in comprehensive schools and make, with that support, help them become better. And by the way, teachers and head teachers and the support staff, I think overall, having spent time going in and out of schools, do a fantastic job.
I agree.
When they're not supported enough, they don't have enough resource, and there's too much red tape and bureaucracy that doesn't enable them to make progress. And then, as you've said, when they've got 30, 35, whatever the number might be, children in a class, when others may have a smaller number, doesn't work. So we need to invest more in schools and change that whole system, because that in itself, if we're really talking about growing the economy, making the country better, whether we're talking about China, India, whatever else, they started with the education.
Start with the
in
education.
a roundabout way.
Education needs to change.
And said, this needs to change and improve. And with that, everything else in terms of growing the economy, and that's worked exceptionally well. So I think comprehensive schools should receive more support. And I am not a fan of academies now that we're on that particular subject. But I did say to you, in 6 minutes' time, you can come back and talk about some other point you want to make about wealth or growth.
I can't remember what that was.
Okay, but go on then. You want to talk about private schools or,
but I'll talk
schooling?
quick about. I personally think even in public schools they should max out class sizes at 20. And if that means we've got to invest more in
By
teachers,
public, you mean state schools?
State schools, yeah. I think we should invest more in teachers.
But state schools, they're not really state schools anymore.
Yeah.
So many trusts through academies and whatever else.
Yeah. But I genuinely think that 40 students in such a short amount of time is too big a class to get to know everyone personally, get to know how to teach them personally, because everybody learns at different rates, everyone learns in different ways. Now, I know from my experience that, take maths for example, because you're good with numbers. My maths teacher, fantastic man, never once gave me 100% on a maths test, and at the time I hated him. I was just like, this isn't fair. Every single test he ever gave us, he put a pie chart in. He was like, no, you didn't do it on the computer. It's not completely accurate. I've docked you a point for it. Because maths was easy for me. I was a little bit arrogant.
Mm-hmm.
I was a lot arrogant. But I can look back and I can acknowledge that. But he knew what he needed to do to push me.
Mm-hmm.
And he did. And I got good grades. I did all my work and stuff like that. But if I'd have been just a nameless, cocky little oik in a class of 40, class of 30, would he have got to know me on that level to be able to push me in that way? Or would he have just been so overwhelmed with the amount of work and the amount of students he's got to deal with to just go, oh yeah, everything's right, 100%, all right, crack on, get out of my sight. I don't have time for that. You're not a problem student. I don't need to worry about you. But I was a problem student because I thought I knew it all, and I didn't. But I needed a good teacher to teach me that.
I think there's a huge argument, debate for having smaller class sizes.
Absolutely. I 100% on with smaller class sizes. But the problem
that
is,
requires a huge amount of investment.
It does.
In terms of more schools. And now what the government's doing is wanting schools to also cater for nursery age children.
Yeah.
Which adds more challenges.
Does.
They add an income stream, but I think primary schools and secondary schools should focus on what they do best.
Yes, I agree.
And children who are in their early years need a different level of attention, care, support, so on and so forth, which the majority of children's day nurseries and preschools do exceptionally well. Support them and get them to do what they're doing really well.
Yeah, I mean, on average, in a day nursery...
And Short Start, by the way, was a fantastic initiative which ended.
Yes.
So kind of going back to that might not be the way forward because we've evolved. But I think it needs a rethink personally. So you were saying?
But on average, how many children are in an individual nursery class?
It depends. If you're looking at preschool, you might have, again, it depends on the size, could be 12, 16, 20 at tops. But what happens, we got ratios though.
Exactly, that's the point I was wanting to get
to the number of children.
Yeah.
Or students, you want to call them students.
We're going to call them students. There is a ratio. You have to have, one practitioner per 10 students, X number of students.
8, yeah.
I knew you'd know the answer to that. So 1 to 8. So we know, as a society, we know that that development is important and that one person can only look after so many children.
Those formative years are so important, yeah.
So we know this. Yeah, as soon as you hit, when do you go to primary school? 6?
9, I think it was 5, I think it was.
5. Okay.
I thought you went which year?
Yeah. So
in the 80s.
Yeah. So at 5 years old, You go from being in a situation where there is one practitioner to 8 of you to one practitioner for 30. And you wonder why the system's failing. Boom, mic drop. We'll cover that in more depth on another. I've taken a note.
But it just shows how you can,
and that will change. And that
think about
changes
different
businesses.
things in terms of businesses and employees. And we talked about having stronger forms of encouragement for employee ownership. We talked about education, which is important because I think that's the single most important thing.
Yeah.
For
education,
parents, for children,
for adults,
for basically the entire country, for the globe, in fact. So, and again, I think we should have a clear vision, set those priorities, and then set a budget to meet those priorities. And it takes time. It's not going to happen overnight.
No.
That would be a much better way of doing it. But I'm not going to be a politician now. Neither are you. So on that note, we'll see you same place, same time next week, where we talk about China and how it's grown and how we can learn business lessons. Until then, take good care of yourselves.
Stay tuned to Salam